Tanya Whitfield didn't look like a federal agent that evening. No blazer, no badge in plain sight, no utility belt, just a flowing dark green maxi dress, gold hoop earrings, and soft brown sandals. The kind of outfit you wear when you're tying ribbons on gift bags and helping your niece blow out candles at her 8th birthday party. Her hair was swept into a loose bun, her makeup minimal, her mood calm. It was dusk as she exited Highway 11, headed home to her quiet neighborhood in McDonough, Georgia, the kind of place with tidy lawns and children riding bikes on the sidewalk. One more turn, and she'd be in her garage. Then came the red and blue flash behind her. Her brow furrowed as she glanced in the rearview mirror. She hadn't been speeding. No misstops. No swerving. Still, she flicked on her signal and pulled over. The window slid halfway down. Her pulse remained steady. Tanya had trained agents on how to conduct themselves during stops like this. She knew the drill. But knowing something and living it are two different things. The officer approached quickly, aggressively. No introduction. No reason for the stop. Turn off the engine. Hands on the wheel, he barked. She did as ordered, silently. Key off. Both hands visible, resting calmly at the top of the steering wheel. May I ask the reason for the stop? She asked, voice even. I'm the one asking questions, he snapped back. Where you coming from? A family birthday. In Monroe. You alone? Yes. He walked around to the back of the vehicle, examining her license plate. Then he returned, eyes narrowing as he studied her. This car matches the description from a bolo. Possible theft 2 blocks from here. Tanya blinked, trying to process. She hadn't stopped anywhere but her sister's. May I show you my ID? She asked, still calm. Hands where I can see them. She didn't flinch, didn't argue. Her fingers stayed glued to the wheel. My identification is in my bag on the passenger seat. I'm just letting you know before I move. I didn't say you could move. Keep your hands up. That wasn't protocol. Not remotely. Something clicked inside her. A quiet shift. The space between reason and reaction. The moment she knew, this could escalate fast. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't plead. She remained still, allowing him to feel in control while she stayed sharply aware of his grip on the flashlight, his aggressive posture, how he seemed to look through her, not at her. Then came the second cruiser. Another officer stepped out, a woman, but she hung back on the sidewalk, just watching. Tanya met her eyes briefly, hoping for something human. Anything. The officer didn't move. I need you out of the vehicle, the first officer Kessler, his nameplate read, demanded. Tanya inhaled. Officer, I am going to reach for my ID. Please. I set out. Now. She unbuckled, deliberate and precise. She wasn't about to make the wrong move. Her badge sat in her wallet on the passenger side, but she knew better than to reach for it now. She opened the door slowly, stepping out. First her left foot, then her right. She stood calmly, facing him. Turn around, he ordered. Before she could comply, he grabbed her arm, yanked it behind her back, and slapped the cuffs on. Metal clicked against her wrists, tight and cold. Tanya said nothing. The woman officer looked momentarily taken aback, brows raised, but didn't intervene. Suspect detained. Kessler announced into his radio. No badge, no benefit of the doubt. Kessler mumbled into his radio, one hand pressing firmly on Tanya's shoulder. Her jaw tightened, not from fear, not from pain, but from a deep, familiar frustration. She'd seen this kind of power play before. Nervous rookies trying to control a scene, suspects acting on impulse, but never this close, never aimed at her. And it only got worse when she asked, once more, to retrieve her ID. She stood beside her car, wrists cinched behind her back, the metal of the cuffs digging into her skin. Her dress swayed gently in the breeze, but she hardly noticed. All she could focus on was one thing. Don't move. Kessler paced behind her, still talking into the radio. He didn't bother to lower his voice. Black female, approximately early 40s, driving a dark gray Camry. Detained for questioning. Possible connection to reported theft nearby. He didn't mention how cooperative she'd been. Didn't note that she had followed every command. That she hadn't resisted. Not once. Finally, the female officer took a few steps closer. She glanced from Tanya's cuffs to Kessler. Something passed between them, but neither spoke. Tanya broke the silence. Officer, please check the ID in the wallet on my front seat. Kessler looked at her like she'd insulted him. You'll wait right there until I say otherwise. Her voice remained calm. I understand. but it may clear up some confusion. Her tone couldn't have been more different from his, measured, deliberate. Still, he didn't respond. Instead, with a burst of dominance, he yanked open the car door and started rummaging through her things as though guilt was a foregone conclusion. Tanya could hear papers shifting, the zipper of her purse opening, then the snap of her wallet. Silence followed. A long, loaded silence. When he finally spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. What is this? There it was. The badge. Gleaming from inside the wallet. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Special Agent Tanya J. Whitfield. 17 years on the job. He froze. The female officer leaned closer to get a look. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Kessler turned around, visibly rattled. Why didn't you say something? Tanya's words were cool, but sharp. I did. There was no shouting. No emotion. Just impact. The truth, heavy and unavoidable. He took a step forward, fumbling. Let's get those cuffs off you. She turned slightly, allowing him access, not out of trust, but to get it over with. His fingers shook as he fumbled with the key. The first try missed. The second time, the cuffs gave way. Tanya rubbed her wrist briefly. Are you all right? The female officer finally asked. The first trace of concern from either of them. Tanya met her eyes. Physically, yes. Kessler couldn't look at her. There's been a lot of reports in this area lately, he muttered. Your car matched ya. Match what? Tanya cut in, her voice steady. Was there a license plate? A full description? A positive ID? He had no answer. You saw me, and you decided I looked like a threat. You skipped protocol. You escalated. And now you're only shaken because I'm someone with a badge. The silence was different now. Not defensive, just exposed. You're right, he said, but the words barely stuck. Tanya's gaze didn't waver. No, Officer Kessler. You didn't get it wrong. You chose wrong. And there's a difference. She didn't say it to wound him. She said it to make it stay with him. The female officer gave Tanya a glance, part regret, part hesitation. She hadn't stepped in when it counted. Now, she looked unsure of what to do. Kessler opened his mouth to say something more, but Tanya raised her hand. I need your name and badge number. He paused, then reluctantly recited both, barely above a murmur. Tanya reached into her car, retrieved her phone, and took a photo of her wrists, still ringed with redness. Then she snapped one of his nameplate. She didn't say what she planned to do. She didn't need to. The wallet still sat open on the seat, badge visible under the car's interior light. Federal credentials. Her name. Her title. Everything spelled out, impossible to misread. Tanya stared at it for a second, then picked it up. Not to wave around. Not to flaunt. But because it was part of who she was. Earned through years of tests, field assignments, and sleepless nights. And now, used against her simply because someone didn't bother to ask her name. Kessler stood awkwardly nearby, arms crossed, authority drained from his posture. What remained was discomfort. The kind that comes when you realize your uniform won't shield you from accountability. Agent Whitfield, he said stiffly, clearing his throat. I apologize for the inconvenience. Tanya repeated the word back quietly. Inconvenience. She gave a slight nod. That's what this was to you. Kessler blinked, fumbling for justification. Things happen fast in the field. Sometimes we have to make snap calls. She cut in again, firm but controlled. You're trained to assess, to ask questions, to follow steps. You skipped every one of them. He looked at the ground. Tanya turned toward the female officer. Your name? Officer Jenna Rollins, she replied. You saw what happened. You saw me comply. You watched him bypass every protocol. Are you going to report this? Rollins shifted uncomfortably. I'll speak with my supervisor. Tanya held her gaze a moment longer, then turned back to Kessler. Do you have any idea what could have happened tonight? If I flinched the wrong way? If I raised my voice? He said nothing. You didn't know I was FBI. You didn't know anything. And still, you treated me like a threat. She stepped back toward her car, leaning against the door. Her breath was steady, but inside, the weight settled. Not just from this incident, but from the countless times she'd braced herself for something like it. Rollins approached again, gentler now. Agent Whitfield, would you like us to call a supervisor to the scene? No, Tanya said. I'll handle this myself. She checked her phone, looked once more at the photo of the red marks on her wrists, then took a final picture of Kessler's nameplate. He watched her like a man who knew a storm was coming and had no shelter. Tanya looked him in the eyes. You made your choice tonight, she said quietly. Now I'll make mine. She climbed back into her car. No slamming the door. No spinning tires. Just the soft purr of the engine starting. And then she drove away. She didn't look back. The trip home was only a few minutes, but every moment replayed in her mind like a film she didn't want to watch again. Not because it scared her, but because it drained her. What frightened her most was how familiar it felt. And she knew, deep down, if she hadn't had that badge, she might still be standing on the side of that road. Or worse. But Tanya didn't let it go. She filed a report. That's when the real story began. The next morning, she rose early. She hadn't slept much. Her wrists still tingled, not from the cuffs, but from what they symbolized. She sat at her kitchen table in silence, coffee cooling beside her, a blank notepad in front of her. Not writing yet, just remembering. Every word, every moment. No embellishment, no gaps. By 9 a.m., she was at the Atlanta field office. Familiar faces passed her, unaware of what she'd gone through the night before. She didn't make a scene, didn't announce it, just asked to speak with internal affairs. The interview room was small and sterile. Tanya sat on one side of a narrow desk. Across from her was Gregory Sims, a tall, quiet man with creases around his eyes and a notepad in hand. She told him everything, from the stop to the cuffs to the silence that followed the badge. Sims didn't interrupt. He just listened and took notes. When she was done, he looked up slowly. You're not the first person to bring up that officer's name. Tanya's expression tightened. Excuse me, Sims said with a sigh, setting down his pen. We've got a backlog of reports linked to Officer Kessler. Most are low-level force complaints, improper stops, and suspicion-based questioning without clear cause. A lot of them were brushed aside. Tanya leaned in, tension sharpening her focus. How many? He hesitated. 8 formal complaints. 3 from young black men under 25. 2 from Latina women. 1 from a Navy veteran. All in the past year and a half. Her fingers tightened in her lap. And nothing's been done? He's been counseled, sent to additional training, but it never stuck. The department hasn't wanted the bad press. You mean they've been covering for him? Sims didn't answer. He didn't have to. What now? She asked. I'm filing this as an official misconduct report, he replied. Because of your position, it'll go straight to the top. No chance it gets buried. Tanya nodded. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like weight. Sims added gently, I won't lie to you. The system doesn't always work the way it should, but your voice carries more than you might think. I didn't report him to throw my weight around, Tanya said. I did it because someone without a badge, someone who didn't know their rights, wouldn't have stood a chance. He gave a brief nod. Understood. Before she left, Tanya handed over the photos, her bruised wrists, Kessler's badge, timestamped and documented. Sims thanked her and promised follow-up. Back in the parking lot, Tanya sat behind the wheel, unmoving. She didn't cry. She didn't call anyone. She just stared at the cement wall in front of her, thinking about all the people who'd been through the same thing but never made it to a desk like Sims's, people without rank, without recognition. Forgotten. She wouldn't forget. That afternoon, her phone rang. It was a friend in the U.S. Attorney's Office in DeKalb County. You really filed it? The friend asked. Yes. You know it's going to get messy, right? I'm counting on it. She hung up and went back to her notes, names, dates, questions no one had asked until now. But with truth came visibility Tanya wasn't ready for. 2 days later, her name was all over local social media, even though she hadn't spoken to a single journalist. Someone inside the department had leaked it, details from the report, confirming that a high-ranking federal agent had been detained by a local officer. The story spread like wildfire. A local news outlet published a piece titled, Federal Agent Mistaken for Suspect by McDonough Officer. They didn't name her, but people connected the dots quickly. Her inbox flooded, interview requests, support messages, hate mail. Protesters showed up outside the department holding signs like, she had a badge, what if she didn't, and stop policing by profile. Tanya wasn't looking for attention, but now she couldn't avoid it. That afternoon, she was called into a private meeting at her FBI office. 2 senior officials sat across from her in a glass-walled room. Respectful, but cautious. This went public faster than we expected, one of them said. I didn't leak anything, Tanya replied. I followed protocol. We believe you, but you understand the complexity. You're a federal agent in the middle of a local incident. It's not an incident, she said evenly. It's misconduct. They exchanged glances. The older official leaned forward. Are you prepared to speak publicly if it comes to that? I'm not here for politics, she said. But I won't stay quiet either. At home, the noise got louder. A news van parked across the street. Neighbors knocked more often, some supportive, others just nosy. Social media was brutal. Some praised her for composure. Others accused her of pulling rank. But what stung most were the ones who said nothing would have happened if she'd just followed orders. As if she hadn't. As if doing everything right ever guaranteed safety. On the third day, Officer Kessler was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. The department released a 2-line statement. We are reviewing the matter with seriousness. Vague. Hollow. But public patience was gone. That weekend, a local church in Covington invited Tanya to speak at a town hall. The pastor had called her personally. We're not asking you to be a symbol, he said. We just want people to hear what really happened. She hesitated, then agreed. That night, the church was packed. Folding chairs filled the aisles. People stood along the walls. Tanya sat in the front row, quiet, until her name was called. No applause. Just silence. She stepped to the podium, looked out at the faces, then down at her own hands. I'm not here tonight as Agent Whitfield, she began. I'm here as someone who followed every rule she ever learned and still ended up in handcuffs on the side of the road. No one spoke. No one moved. She told the story, not for shock, not for pity. Just truth. And then she looked directly at a group of teenage boys in the front pew. Their eyes locked on her, wide and still. I'm not special because I wear a badge, she said. I'm lucky I had one that night. But that shouldn't be the difference between dignity and disgrace. No claps. Just quiet. Deep, resonant quiet. But Tanya stayed focused on what mattered, what came next. A week later, Tanya sat outside a community center in Stonecrest. She'd been invited to a youth mentorship event. Not to speak. Just to be present. But the organizer, a retired teacher named Miss Jean, had called her directly. They need to see someone like you, she'd said. Not just for what happened, for how you carried it. Tanya was tired of being told she showed grace. She hadn't stayed calm to inspire. She'd stayed calm to survive. But still she came. Not for headlines. For the kids. Inside, the room was modest. Plastic chairs, worn tile floor, a leaning podium. Around 30 high schoolers sat scattered, listening half-heartedly to a volunteer talk about careers. Tanya stayed in the back until Miss Jean waved her forward. Some heads turned. Some whispered. Tanya stepped up. No script, no mic. I wasn't planning to speak today, she began. But I'm glad I came. A few students leaned forward. I want to tell you about a moment that could have gone very wrong, she said. But more than that, I want to explain why it didn't. She told them what happened. Plainly, calmly. How the officer yelled instead of asking. How she stayed quiet. Not because she felt safe, but because she didn't. How it all changed when he saw the badge. Then she paused. You know what scared me most? She asked. The room was silent. That without that badge, I was invisible to him. Not a person, not a professional, just a profile. A boy near the front raised his hand. What would you have done if you didn't have your badge? Tanya didn't rush to answer. I don't know, she admitted. And that's the part that still keeps me up. Another teen girl raised her voice. Do you think he'll get fired? I don't know that either, Tanya said. But I spoke up not just for me, for everyone who didn't have a title to protect them. Someone clapped. Then another. Not loud, but real. Afterward, a few students approached. One asked how to handle authority without losing himself. A girl said she wanted to become a lawyer. Tanya stayed. She listened. She didn't lecture. She shared. Later that evening, Miss Jean handed her a container of cookies. You didn't come to be a role model, she said. But that's what you became. Tanya smiled. I just wanted to be heard. You were, Jean said. That night, Tanya sat on her back porch, scrolling through messages. One stood out, from a younger officer she'd once trained. Saw what happened. Proud of how you handled it. Still work to do. But you reminded a lot of us why we started. She didn't respond right away. She didn't need to. She set the phone down and watched the night stretch across the yard. This wasn't a story about revenge. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about reminding people that dignity isn't granted by a badge. It's owed, long before one is shown. If you've ever been judged before being seen, speak up. Because silence is what keeps the wrong people in power.